Hey guys, okay, so I just wanted to hop on here and discuss something interesting that I've been hearing about on some of the Facebook groups. And, obviously recently someone had posted a whole bunch of the original scans from the Hero book, all the original artwork, and everyone is just, laser eyed looking over every little detail. And people have noticed some differences between the scan pages and the pages that we see on screen in the show. And I think that obviously the differences are there, but I think the conclusions that people are coming to, I don't necessarily agree with. So I'm going to put my 2 cents in and offer alternate conclusions that I believe explain what we're seeing. Yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing is like this love spell page. Someone keenly noticed that the original page that we see in the show, the love spell title belongs a lot higher because they noticed that the top of the L's match up kind of with the top of the border. So this is much too low to match what we see on screen. And a lot of sometimes people, if they see one difference or something that doesn't look like it matches, then they automatically think, okay, it's a repaint, or it's not the original page, or oh, it's a different version that was in some other book somehow, or something like that. And these kind of out there ideas of there being different versions of the book with different iterations of the same page and stuff like that can start to swarm. And I don't believe that there was like repaints of the same page where they would change colors or they would change the alignment or things like that. It usually has a lot more to do with edits that were done to the scans themselves. So if you look at the love spell page here, like the first thing I noticed when I really looked into it was I saw definite signs, artifacts of Photoshop and editing. Like if you look in here, you can see there's this stain here. Now this is the original location of the stain, but you can see that the bottom part of the stain is right here as well. It's kind of duplicated and then it fades out into nothing, almost like there was this fuzzy selection when they decided to isolate or select the title in order to move it down. I'm also seeing this stain right here. Right here, this is the original placement right here of it. And then you're seeing this little hill, and you're seeing it here, and you're seeing like duplications. That's the signs of use of the clone tool. So if you guys don't know what the clone tool is, that's essentially when, let's say I want to cover up spell. So I'll just take some, parchment, and I'll just paint over it, and I can conceal it by taking one portion and cloning it over in a different area. So I'm seeing other signs of that. Like you can see this stain right here is also right here. So that was duplicated. I'm seeing that the stain right here, we don't get to see the bottom of it. It kind of just fades out into nothing. And you can see the bottom of the stain is right here. So this was obviously moved down. So what I've done is I've gone into Photoshop and I have corrected this. I have matched the stains up with each other and restored the original placement of the title, which should belong right here. And naturally that leaves a gap. So if you cut something out and move it up, obviously it fits over everything at the top, but there's a huge gap at the bottom. So I was able to fill that in. And even though it's still not original staining, it's at a portion of the page that's luckily very benign. It's not very detailed. It's just kind of empty parchment. So, I'd prefer this because of the placement being correct and some fake patterning in here or imperfect patterning that doesn't match exactly, as opposed to a title that's completely in the wrong place, But, so that's the thing, is that, when people notice a difference in the scans, they automatically think it can't be the same page. And that's just not true. Another example of this is the Valkyries. So this is a version of the page that people have seen a lot of. This was featured in the Charmed magazine. We've seen this a lot, and I know a lot of people, their first instinct is, well, wait, that's this. This is what the original page looked like. It had a gemstone. So why are we seeing a version? This has to be a repaint. And my theory, now I don't have any evidence to totally back this up, but I have repainted all of the pages in the Book of Shadows. I brought them into Photoshop, and I've spent months and months and months and months replicating every single little stain. So here is my version of the Valkyries page. And you can see, you know that there's this kind of characteristic staining right here and over here, and how it kind of reaches up here. I went through and tried to match all of that. And not just on this page. I did this on every single page in the entire book. So I've spent a lot of time screen matching and looking at the staining and all of that. And I know what's possible to replicate by hand, and I know what's just totally not. A lot of times when we see these pages, different versions, yes, they may look different, but the staining is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. It's not possible to get a version where you restain the page and down to every little last detail, it's exactly identical. These are organic processes. They just kind of stipple on some staining and they get an effect. It's not something that they can replicate because of the way that they create it to begin with. And so, when people think that this is just a new version and he tried to copy his old version, when you realize the stains of the aging and everything match up, it's just not possible. And then when you look at the empty spaces, you see that it's consistent with the aging of the entire page. I mean, the thing is that what I have come to believe is that there are many different versions of a page, that Dan would scan pages oftentimes before they were finished. I don't know if that means that he scanned them through the entire process, from sketching to different paint passes, and if he had a whole, in progress kind of documentation of one page and he scanned it throughout the whole process, or if he just got to a certain place and went, okay, I want to save this part and I'll scan it. Because you have to remember, I'm like a digital artist, and I'm used to having the magical power of the Control Z or the undo. When you're painting a physical thing, you can't undo it. So every time you continue to work on something, you are risking all of the progress that you've made up until that point with the page. And I can imagine that he got in the habit of, almost like when you're in a game, you're playing a game and you do like a checkpoint. When you or you're writing an essay and you press, save to save your progress. When he scanned these in before they were completed, it was almost like he was documenting, the page as he was, creating it, but also having documentation or a safeguard in case the page got ruined while he was doing it. He could maybe reprint this version out and then continue it on again through there. Now, I don't have any idea of when they might have done that, but essentially what I'm saying is that I believe Dan often scanned these pages in before they were finished for whatever reason. Whether it was to preserve it as he did it, so if he ever had to go back and repaint it, he could remember how he created it, or if a page got ruined, he could just kind of go back to the last scan, print that out, and continue it on from that last point, or for whatever reason. But this is not a repaint. This is an original version of the original page just before it was finished. Now, another example of this is if we go to this version. Now we have this scan. This is a scan from Dan where he, we can tell that this is obviously an original scan, okay? One thing that you can't duplicate is, like these wisps of the pen, the pen marks. the ink wash stains, the unique patterns that they create are very distinct, and you can't replicate that just by getting some more ink wash and doing it again. It's too characteristic, and when it's not the same one, when it's not the original, it's very, very obvious. So when you look at just how similar the staining is and all of the different landmarks you want to compare, this is the original image. But it's missing some key stuff, like that cheek shadow. You can see if you look in here, that cheek shadow is gone. And some people will notice those differences and go, oh, well, that means that, this is an alternate version, or this is a repaint or something. But this is still the original version. That was the hero illustration that we see in the book. But it was just before he added finishing touches. There's another example of this. I mean, on almost every page, the Titans page has it. The Banshee page the Banshee page has it. The Bunyip page has it. Even the Necromancer. There's the right side that has the Necromancer portrait where he's standing there. And Grams wrote certain things on the page. We have a scan of the original version, but without the writing. Without the writing about him liking lamb, chops, and whatever it is. We have a version of that. Now, that's still the original page. The authentic, one and only original version of this page. But it's just before that had been written in. And that's often what we see, So the other point I wanted to mention was just how edited some of these scans can be. So this is the version of the scan afterwards. So we have a version here before he went in and did some finishing touches, and this is afterwards. So it's still the same artwork, it's just at a different phase. But, one thing I noticed Dan had a tendency to do was to go in, and when he was editing his pages, he would do some clone work where he would, you'd see some cloning around the edges or whatever, but he had a tendency to enhance the whites of his images, and I can show you how we can actually prove that. So if we go to Adjustments, Exposure, and we start to mess with the gamma, what you'll start to realize is when we knock the image down, the overpainting starts to become very evident, and you can see how this has been added digitally at the end in post. So you can see how he went in and he painted the white accents and enhanced them. He painted on the teeth and all of that. You can see that afterwards it had been edited. This is also the same for the crone. So this is Dan's version. You can see here's his watermark or his copyright brand. And if you look at the crone, you can see just how bright and white her face is. And this doesn't look the way that it did on the show. The way that it looked on the show was a lot dirtier. Exactly like this. This is the way that the image looked on the show. But you can see that Dan has come in, or I'm assuming obviously it was Dan. And when we do this, you can start to see how it's been painted digitally. So he had a little brush, just a normal soft round brush like this, and he had it on white, and he was just going through and painting it to kind of clean up all of these things. So he was going through doing that, cleaning this up, and trying to clean up the images. Now, one of the things you notice is if you look at the eyes, they look a lot blanker. He actually redid the pupils. Now you can see that the pupils are actually identical. That he took one pupil and moved it and put it into the other eye. Now I don't know which one was original, but if you look at this version, this is the original eye. So it seems like he took the left eye and put it into the right, because this one's a lot more circular. So it looks like he took this one and put it into this eye when he was editing it. So I've actually gone in and I've restored everything. I've adjusted the colors. This is like the proper version. And I did that the same with the Valkyries. Now, I'm also really experienced at printing these pages, not the scans, but my own artwork. And I know how to edit the pages so they print the way that I want them to. So some might argue that the white of this is a little bit flat or bright, but I promise you, it's going to push the printer to put less ink there, and it's going to only put the stains onto the parchment. If I printed this, it would be very orange, and it would put a color over everything. This is going to print gorgeous. So, but yeah, there I've restored, the backdrop. So, this is just what happens. Another version is, a lot of times I would see with the Balthazar Vanquishing Potion page, especially the version that we see in the Charmed box set, the Book of Shadows complete series box set, or in the magazine. They often did this thing where they would take the page. Here, let me show you guys. So they would have the page, and then maybe they would want to make the artwork smaller or get some more, some more room around the artwork. So what they would do is they would just shrink it like that, and then they would select the entire borders. And they do this thing like I showed you, content-aware fill, where it will use AI to understand the patterns of the page and the look of the page, and it'll fill in your empty space all in one go. But one of the artifacts of this is that you end up getting this patterning, this clone patterning, where things are duplicated and they're repeated a bunch. And we see that a lot. We see that on the Ames page, the portrait of Ames. There was a lot of clone brush usage or content-aware fill because they were trying to kind of clean up the corners and stuff like that. So editing is very, very common, especially with these pages. I know that someone just pointed out that there was a difference with the Wendigo page. Now, I will point out, this is all still the original stuff. Like I said before, the smudging and the unique patterns of the ink wash, that's not something you can replicate, okay? So the Wendigo page is still the original page. And so much so because there's so much smudging with this page, you couldn't replicate that. It is all of the original stuff, but what I believe is if you look at the shape of like the W and the Wendigo, you can see how it looks almost smushed. It looks like it was like shrunk or scaled from the sides in, if that makes sense. Like it was horizontally compressed. Now, I don't know why that is, because I think that what it could also be is that there's a possibility that they wanted the Wendigo title to be larger, so they enhanced it. So, sorry, I just thought it might actually be easier to just open it up and look at it. Okay. So, when it comes to looking into this, I haven't looked into it. There are distinct inconsistencies, and I'm seeing a bit of a gap here. So it looks like what they did, here. Even in here, you can see a bit of softening right in here on that stain. You can see some softening. So obviously what they had done is probably something like this. They probably grabbed it up through here. Wait, I need the whole thing in view. Hold on, sorry. Oh, there you go. Okay, we're seeing it. Yeah. So they probably did this, grabbed it from like here, because you can see it ending there. And like that. And then if you were to correct this, let me pull up my little reference. So the way that I would probably do this is you probably want it just to shrink it. So it met probably right there, and the O was right after dead. So like that. Okay. So that's probably the proper proportions of the Wendigo. Now, for me, you know, it's unfortunate because when they do stuff like this, what they do is they get rid of all the natural parchment. And I would really, really like to be able, you know, if we were to shrink this and then I was to just select all right here, like let's just put it to the test and see how good the program does. Now, I'm losing even the smallest amount of parchment I lose, I am not okay with. So this is definitely not me doing it for permanent purposes, but I just want to see if the theory would work. So if I select this and we just do a little content aware fill, yeah, no, that's really not okay with me. It's okay, like it did a pretty good job, but I'd probably have to go in and do that manually. But what I do see is that's probably a lot more correct. But we'd probably need to lower the text, and there's probably a bit that we lost up above the title to get that looking correct. But the thing is that these are the original pages. These are the original scans. These are things you can't replicate. Especially on this page, the smudges, no, you can't replicate that. These marks, they're too characteristic to be able to replicate to be this identical. So, you know, I really, really am happy. I mean, you know, I went through and did all of the pages. You know, I spent so much time replicating you know, the Book of Shadows and painting in the stains. You know, like here I'll show you guys my like my hollow page. You know, I went in and I painted in all of the marks and all of the stuff just so that they were perfect, because I didn't ever think that we would have scans. You know, I went in, I painted the brush strokes and all of the marks, and trust me, I know when it comes to replication what is possible and what is not. And these stains and these scans are the real deal, even though they might have gone through some edits. And I'm just so overjoyed by the fact that we have them at all that it doesn't bother me too much, you know? You know, I think a lot of the work is to just go in and to maybe fix some of this stuff, you know, like changing the size of the Wendigo title. Like here, when I've restored the, you know, the face of the crone and just repositioning the love spell to be where it should. But other than that, I mean, even if you don't do any of that stuff, it's amazing to have real scans of the real pages. For someone who just is obsessed with the stains, because that's, you know, like the last thing, I'll leave it at this. When I was replicating the pages, the thing that I was always chasing was authenticity. I wanted the pages to look as realistic and authentic as possible. And for me, that was in the staining. The staining is what makes the pages feel real, because they are so organic and so characteristic. And, you know, these are, you know, like right here, I painted this stain in, you know, the way that behind the lettering you've got the staining. I went in and did all of that because that's what made the pages look identical to me. So, you know, like here, going in and painting in all the stains, that's what makes it look real to me. And when I have a version where I don't just have really close replicas of the patterning and the staining, but I have the exact stains, you know, I had to meticulously do my pages in order to get something that looked as authentic as this does. This one, I'm not as anal about the details, mainly just because this is so authentic to start with. It is abundant with authenticity because it is the real deal. It doesn't have to prove itself. It is the original artwork. And even with some slight changes, it is still 1,000-fold more authentic than what I have. No matter how many hours it took for me to do this, I appreciate the scans for what they look like, even if they were edited, because I know how much more authentic they feel. They seal the deal. They feel real, and that's all I care about. So I love them. I'm gonna really use them when it comes to making my new book. So the book that I currently have, I'm gonna keep it the way it is because having spent thousands and thousands of hours repainting replica pages to be perfect, to match the staining and all of that, I have to love that. You know, those are my blood, sweat, and tears. So I'm gonna keep my first book that way. But as I continue to create my replica on my Patreon, that one is all about accuracy. It is no sentimentality. It is getting things as close as humanly, physically possible, no matter what. So I'm, overjoyed to have these because you can't beat them. They're original scans. And that's what my new replica page set is going to be filled with, is original scans. And where I can make some fixes, I will. But these are leaps and bounds better than anything we've ever had. So it just makes me so happy. Yeah, I think that, like I said, a lot of people will think that some of these are repaints, some of these are fake, some of these aren't authentic. And the truth is that they are. Just because they have differences, they're either Photoshop fixes in post, or they are scans of the paintings, of the illustrations before they were fully finished, like here. So thank you guys. That's my 2 cents. That's what I think. And thanks for watching.